Good evening, and welcome to our interview tonight with Tanya Yamanaka Aynessazian. She's a candidate for Senate District 2. Conducting our interview tonight is Gabe Katz and Antu Harvey. Before we get started, I'd like to offer a little information on HULI PAC. We are a group of grassroots community advocates volunteering our time to HULI PAC. Many of us have witnessed during oral testimonies the problems of being the minority voice, observing seated representatives voting against the āina, or the majority of testifiers. The majority rule currently allows the continuation of colonial structures, corporate rule, and methods over Ika Hawaii for āina and its people to thrive. We must collectively understand the individual power we carry as Hawai'i Island residents by getting involved. Who's asking our first question tonight?
That will be me, Jeff.
All
Hi, Tanya.
right.
Hello. Hey. So just to start off very simply, what has inspired you to run for office this election cycle? And can you describe your core values and how those values apply to Hawaii's future?
Yeah. Well, what inspired me is I have this fire in the belly, like fire in my belly, and I have been providing testimony for, almost 20 years now, off and on, and it's just increased over the more recent years. And I feel like we need people who really have a massive amount of passion to keep doing this and really fight for everything we need. We are at a crossroads. Everything seems to be wrong, and yet there are a lot of good things happening in our community, but they're kind of, we can't hear about them. We can't focus on those because there's so much where we people feel disenfranchised, cost of living so extravagant. And I just have this fire in the belly that, like, I just can't not contribute to make things better for all, not one person or one group of people, but everybody.
Thank you. Very concise. Thank you, Tanya.
Mhm.
Social issues is the topic. In your opinion, what is the most pressing issue that the state Senate needs to address at this time? And what should be done to address that in the next term?
So, there's this a lot of things that are happening in the House of Representatives with $35,000 brown bag, and there's just this like shadow over that Capitol where people don't have public trust in government. And I think the Senate, because there's only 25 people in the Senate, so it's easier hopefully to get along and make things happen, and yet they don't seem to be making big things happen. And, we need people in office who can be accountable to the whole and and restore the public trust because our engagement is going down, 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 down. And democracy and the policies we have are going to be best when more and more people are engaged. And because we're going to come up with the best solutions by having the people who are on the ground doing it. And a lot of times, people on the ground doing things are not actually creating the policies. And that's kind of sad. That's kind of sad because those are the people on the front lines of anything, whether they're farmers or people who lost their homes in the lava flow, or people who can't pay for their insurance because insurance in Puna is ridiculous. I'm sure it's like that everywhere in Hawaii. And so we need people who are accountable to the whole, but also accountable to all the sum of its parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers the question, but I hope it does.
I think just to clarify, what do you feel like is one of the most pressing issues specifically to address at this time in the state Senate?
I think raising revenues. I think the Senate like missed the ball on a couple things, with conveyance tax and really raising taxes and raising revenues on the people who are not paying their fair share, the mega millionaires, the big corporations. We really are missing an entire half of the equation in the financial statement when we don't really focus on raising revenues so that we can stop saying we don't have money for all these other things. And the Senate could lead in that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. I'm sure we'll get into maybe fund allocation as a future question, but I want to just stick to what we have prepared for now. Um, can you speak a bit on your community involvement, such as a successful community project you've been a part of, and again, your community involvement in general?
So I think the biggest thing I was a part of was working on the county council Pohakula resolution. I took input from Kupuna and people around the island, and I helped write that resolution. And I started and moved it from start to finish. I made sure that all the people who would be inclined to participate in that would get on board with it. And and that was not an easy process because, in all honesty, that resolution started as like 7 pages, and 7 pages of whereas statements is not going to pass. And so that was boots on the ground, and that was probably the largest community project I've worked on because it was island wide, and luckily I had big partners to help with that. But that was a lot, and it was really hard to move initially because a lot of people didn't really want to touch that one, knowing it was going to be controversial.
Thank you.
Public safety. Severe storms and fires continue to pose a threat against public safety. How is the current system working, in your opinion, and what do you think needs to change, especially the influence that the state legislature can have?
Yeah, I think we need more investment in the resilience hubs and in the community. The community pivots first in any kind of disaster. Puna knows that very well over here. We've had so many different things happen, and a lot of people in Puna were affected recently by the Kona lows as well. And we don't have the transportation or the roads to clear people out of certain areas either. But we know that the community can organize and pivot quickly. So we need to get more infrastructure and resources to those people and those hubs. Vibrant Hawaii does a great job, but there's probably a bunch of other organizations that are ready to be there when something happens, because you never know where or when it's going to happen. In Puna, we need more roads and pathways connecting communities too, so that if you can't get out this way, you can help people that way. Because I've lived in a bunch of different places all over Puna as a renter for many, many years with my family. And every time we experienced any kind of disaster, the community that was in your immediate neighborhood was on it right from the minute one. So there's always people who are left out, but you have to be able to take care of the key people like that so that you can get out into the broader areas.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more money for an investment into creating that kind of boots on the ground infrastructure instead of just top down.
Mm-hmm.
But Tanya, oftentimes we see interactive action in response to severe weather events or to natural disasters or what have you. And the response often first costs lives or people's well-being in order to implement a change. How do you foresee incentivizing your fellow Senate members or your constituents to really enact these changes that you're describing?
I mean, in all honesty, most of the senators are on Oahu, and they experienced firsthand through these Kona low storms really some devastating effects. And so I think people are really starting to get it that this can happen to any community. And Puna was the recipient of help from across the islands, from across the continent, really, in 2014 and 2018, and Maui as well, and now Oahu. Really, it was heartbreaking to see, because I remember through our first tropical storm or hurricane how that felt when everything seemed to move so slow. But once the community gets organized, you can't take that away. You can't ever take that kind of mobilization away.
Awesome.
Thank you.
In a similar vein to public safety, not as overt of a risk as weather events and fires and such, but waste management is a concern. So currently, Hawaii Island's landfills are projected to fill up by 2050 unless measures are taken to divert or otherwise minimize the production of physical waste. What do you see as some possible solutions to addressing this issue and further future-proofing our island from outcomes of limited capacity at the landfill?
So obviously we need to talk about the landfill replacements, right? And what we're going to do. But I think what we're not doing is true solid waste diversion programs. So we can, start moving things that don't need to go to the landfills that can be reused. We need a repair economy. We need a reuse economy. We need, there's I guess what I would say is I'm trying to find the best word because degrowth is not very popular. But we need to repair, we need to reuse, we really need to get back into these. And I think a lot of people in Puna here, we're already doing that. We don't like to throw anything away. You never know when you're going to use it. And the crazy thing is, you do end up using it, or you give it to someone who will use it, whether it's a part of a lawnmower. I have an old lawnmower that's broken that I've had for now over 1.5 years, but I'm not going to get rid of it because I know someone's going to need some of those parts, or I'm going to find someone who can actually fix it and I'll be able to use it. And so just the diversion piece and the reuse and repair, there's just the county of Hawaii in particular has a great solid waste management plan. The majority of it has not been implemented or funded. And so I don't know what other counties' solid waste management plans look like, but from the state level, if the state can really coordinate better with the counties like that to fund these other options, and then that doesn't take away from the fact that we do need to figure out the landfill program. The problem is that nobody wants a new landfill in their neighborhood. So are people willing to give up a life of convenience and start repairing things and reusing things and upcycling things? And, we need to start making that cooler.
Do you think the solution is more so on the consumer or on the infrastructure, or obviously it's a combination of both, but obviously thus far we haven't seen a major recycling program or at least a major effective recycling program, at least on Hawai'i Island. What do you think the holdup is there?
I do think we need to place a lot of responsibility on the producers. And I think that's where at the state legislature level we could do better, because extended producer responsibility has not been pushed through yet. I think we have a task force. I mean, we don't need a task force. We know who the top producers are, who are mega billion, global, huge companies.
Yeah.
So why are we importing things that end up being so much garbage and we're not taxing them? Here's again, where as a regular consumer, we're all being taxed on everything, but who's getting taxed on the stuff that we all want to buy? Don't blame the consumer, because we'll buy something different if there's something different that's better. So we need to start holding accountable more up the line, I think.
What would you do in terms of making the producers more accountable?
There was a bill, an EPR bill back maybe 2023, I think it was. It might have been 2022. That looked pretty good to me, and it had them pay a percentage of the weight so that they would then be contributing to the reuse and the recycling programs and the waste management end of that. And it's like other states. There's a couple other states that do this already. I'd have to get back up to speed on that. But I think we could do really much better in that area. We have to stop using. The convenience lifestyle has been really great for the last couple generations, but now we can look back in hindsight and go, "Ooh, has it been as good as we think? What if the outcomes really good? We have the ability to get real with ourselves."
All right, next question.
Thank you for dealing with the nuances.
As you can tell, we're kind of pivoting around on topics and then circling back again. So this one is military testing and astronomical research as exemplified by Pohakaloa training area and the 30-meter telescope project, respectively, continue to be a source of concern amongst residents and Native Hawaiians. What is your stance on these and similarly related scientific and military endeavors on Hawai'i Island? And what new legislation would you support to counteract the harmful environmental and cultural impacts of these projects?
So I'm just going to say overall, what we need to do is admit that we are entering a demilitarized economy transition. That's what people want. And so if we're going to stay in denial about that and keep saying we want a diverse economy but fund tourism and militarism, we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, and we're actually not creating a future pathway. So here's the thing. I can call a taxi and I could say, hey, I'm in San Diego, come pick me up. And the taxi's going to go to San Diego. It's not going to come to Pahoa. So if we don't admit where we are, we can't get to where we're going to go, right? So we need to admit that we have already entered some sort of demilitarization transition period. And we need to admit it so that we can start outlining the strategies and the pathway so that we can create a new regenerative economy and down the militarized economy, because Hawaii has never seen anything but a militarized economy. Okay? So it's understandable that people in office who come from the establishment and have a serious lack of curiosity and creativity to not be able to imagine that. Like, what would that look like? I don't know. Easy answers. You know what I mean? Easy answers. These are going to be harder conversations. I'm not afraid. That's why I'm running. I have a fire in my belly to help be diplomatic about this. Let's figure out a path, because the longer we're in denial about where we're headed, the worse it's going to be when maybe they just bolt out of here and they go take over Greenland or Iceland. God forbid. I'm just kidding. Okay. But the truth is, we are suffering health consequences. They are honestly just killing the spirit of the land. The militarization of Pakuloa, cutting off the top of a mountain to build a 30-meter telescope. You know, here's another thing. Like, I would love to work with the businesses and organizations that were pro-TMT, even though they were pro-TMT. Again, admit where we are. It's not going to happen. And let's figure out where we overlap on creating a different vision for the future. Right? Like, why are we holding on to these things that, you know, people say, well, it could be this. We could have TMT. It would be so great. The communities have already spoken. Overwhelmingly, geothermal is the same thing. Overwhelmingly, the people of Puna have spoken up. No more geothermal exploration. Stop expanding, right? Let's make sure it's safe. Let's get the testing. Why does the community have to keep showing up time and time and time again, showing that it's, you know, making us sick, making us ill? It's causing problems. It's maintaining the status quo militarized economy of some. It's serious denial, and it borders on abuse at this point. That's the truth of it. It borders on abuse and insanity, because if we're going to keep talking in circles, we are not moving forward. And that's pretty much the definition of insanity, right? Just keep replaying the same circumstances and same solutions. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Tanya, you just mentioned, I believe, a demilitarized economy. So I guess on the note of more of a people-based economy, what are the most exciting opportunities for jobs pertaining to Malama āina and environmentalism, both in your district and as you foresee them across the islands?
Well, in a regenerative economy, there's every long line along that supply chain. So from farmers and food to then waste diversion and to making sure the water's protected. So instead of us having businesses that are seeping toxins into the water, we would have businesses that are popping up to clean the water and make sure that the water's good, or find a way to divert it in a different way so it can go start getting back to where we were, the Ahupua'a system, and land management in the way it was meant to be. So we'll need reuse and repair economies. We'll need tool sharing, resource sharing, tool libraries. There's so many opportunities. And this is, I think, the other problem is that people are like, oh, you need to grow up and you need to be a lawyer, you need to be a doctor, you need to be. There's so many other things. Like, we have an entire state full of artists, creatives, gig workers, circus performers, all kinds of creative people, cultural practitioners, and so much indigenous wisdom. Why are we not focusing on how to make people more entrepreneurial so they can be fending for themselves in a way that serves their community, that they make money? It's really, this is, to me, it's not rocket science, because I look at, like, I have 6 grandkids, and these kids are very different than we were. Very different than my generation. I'm older Gen X. Very, very different. You guys think very differently, like Gabe and these younger folks. They're extremely creative. They're not going to ever work for the man and trade money for time, which has really only been happening for how many, less than a couple hundred years for sure, trading money for time like this. The extractive economy is dying, thankfully. But if we're going to stay in denial, like, again, and not admit that people want to be entrepreneurs, they want to be boots on the ground, they want to fend for themselves, but they don't know how to do it when we train them to not be that, and then just say at 18, you're out of school, and go work for someone. What are you going to do? We're really not preparing them, actually. We're not really preparing kids.
Do you believe that issue stems from, like, the Americanized culture of these islands? Do you believe that this could be counteracted by some legislature? What would it take to incentivize and encourage people to pursue these more creative fields, or, as you even described, like a tool sharing program or other means of generating income and community that are not, for whatever reason now, currently in existence?
I think in some ways, like here in Puna, that this kind of thing is happening already. It's just a matter of how do we fund it, how do we formalize it, how do we get people who are doing it to be able to make money doing it so that they can pay their bills, instead of a lot of people doing it for free. And literally, I don't have all the answers, but I know the answers already exist in the people of Hawaii. I have so much faith in them. And I think when we look at top-down hierarchy, it's very patriarchal, and the answers come from the top down. And as we transition again, also from a demilitarized economy, also a patriarchal, understanding of the world, and we move to a matriarchal one. A matriarchal economy isn't about women being in charge. It's about doing everything for the children, for our what we've created. And so we're talking about how do we build systems that nurture our children and where they want to, the kind of world they want to inherit. And I think people will be able to figure it out, because people have passion for what they love and what they want to do. That just gets squashed because they have to think about how to get a job. I'm watching this in my own kids who are in their 20s. You know what I mean? And I keep telling them, yeah, like, if you're not happy exchanging time for money, just do something that you're loving for money until you can do what you love. But it's still, if you can enjoy the time or the people you're with. But, my kids didn't do the standard, like, I'm going to go to college and get a degree and then apply it and fit into a job. They're trying to figure out what they love to do so that they can stay a part of the community. And it's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, but I think they're a little bit happier because they have more agency over their life, over their happiness. I hope. Maybe not every day. It's a cruel world right now. Let's not, I'm not trying to idealize it at all.
Well, thank you for that, Tanya. I'll pass it up to Anna too, so we can get to some of the questions with the time we have left.
Okay. So you had mentioned earlier the challenge of getting the community, involved and civically engaged, and a lot of contributing factors to that. What would you do to promote civic engagement and more effectively involve residents in the solution and decision-making processes, especially given with the legislature spends so much time on Oahu, and there's just even a logistical challenge, at least during sessions? So What are your ideas?
So my first idea is access to power. So why from the neighbor islands do people have to fly over? Why can they only call? Why aren't there office hours in our communities? Why isn't there Zoom office hours, even during session? Because again, most people can't fly over there. You know what I mean? Most people don't get a call back. There's a lot of calls, but if something's very important to you, there should be a way to have face-to-face communication via Zoom, or possibly I've thought about, do we need to write a bill to ensure that representatives are in their district for office hours? It could be at a coffee house. We don't have to pay for overhead. You don't have to make it expensive and formal. You can say, I'm going to be at this place at this time, and I'm going to talk to as many people as I possibly can. But we need to have more back and forth, more outreach, because we can't have policies created in a vacuum by, in the Senate, 25 people, you know what I mean? And then it gets passed back and forth, goes to committee. Yes, some people we have a privilege, those of us who can testify. Those of us who have time and the wherewithal I admit how much privilege I have to be able to do that. It makes me want to cry, because the people that don't have that privilege are the ones who are the most in need of that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So access to power, in person, office hours. And then really, how do we create a way to let the public know? I've been trying to think of this with actually other non-incumbent people who are running, because this seems to be a similar thread of an idea that how do we talk about all the bills that are being introduced, and how do we get them organized by topic to push out to the public? So how do we make it easier? Because the Capitol.gov site, is great as it is, it's just a database. How do we make that information more just easier for people to digest and figure out what might interest them? And I'm saying this because there was a bill, I think it was HB 1728, that had to do with catchment tanks and the possible. And I see that the intention of the bill, and the bill is sitting on the governor's desk, by the way. The bill has probably good intentions, that the state is recognizing catchment tanks as official infrastructure now, because they probably developers want to develop homes where there's not water, right? So we need this. Yet I've been living in Puna, and no one's been admitting that this is infrastructure the whole time I've lived here for 20 plus years. You know what I mean? We've been on our own, try to figure out, who do we hire to clean them? Do we clean them? What does it look like? And so, this whole bill went through, is sitting on the governor, and I never even knew about it. And it even talks about catchment tanks allowing the county to register them. And once they're registered, are they going to start taxing us for water that comes from the sky? Are they going to make sure they're clean? I have no idea. I think the intention of the bill is good, but again, when we create these kind of policies without talking to the people who are actually using them, did we put the cart before the horse? Are we missing a whole bunch of people that really probably have opinions about this and how they could be helped as well? Anyways, I'm probably getting off track about that one. But that's why I thought, how do we get information out to the community members so that more people might want to be engaged, because they're going to find something that actually might affect them.
Thank you.
On the topic of citizen empowerment, I want to talk a little bit about food sovereignty. So over 80% of our food is imported. In that vein, which local agricultural or food security projects would you support across the islands, and how can we scale those models to meet the growing needs of the island's growing population?
So my favorite program is Kokua Harvest, and that's a food basket. And so a lot of us here in Puna, we have trees, we have fruit or food growing on them, and we can't harvest it all. Or, if you have a couple of 80-year-old tutus, living there, they're letting their lychee go, they're not picking it, or they have avocados around. And Kokua Harvest gets people out into the community to pick and distribute through the food basket. That program should be widespread. It should be in every community. We should not be letting food go to waste that is already thriving and growing in people's yards. And then it should expand more so because we should be planting more food. We should be planting more food. This is so crazy that this is not already happening. Why are we not giving trees to people that want them? You want to plant a tree of food in your backyard? Let's give them away. It's going to take years for that and train them. This is not rocket science. We could be doing this, and those trees are not going to feed just that family. They're going to feed probably a circumference of people in that area. So that's community power. That's giving community power. But I also know that a militarized economy and occupation doesn't want people to be able to feed themselves either. So there's that.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, the Hawaii state minimum wage is $16 an hour. And do you think this is sufficient to support individuals and families in maintaining their residency here? And if not, how would you address affordability and fair wages on our island?
Everybody deserves a living wage, period. Now, as a previous fiscal officer, business manager of a nonprofit adult daycare, I was tasked with figuring out how we were going to ramp up our very low minimum wage for entry-level employees to what I considered at that time, this is 6 years ago now, a living wage, which would have been like $22, right, or more. How do we? The equation doesn't balance easy. Okay, it's not an easy thing to figure out. You do have to rearrange things. You do. There are hard conversations that have to be had in a company that's used to being very top heavy in executive pay. And so there needs to be some reality pills that people can swallow before this can really happen. But everybody deserves a living wage. I mean, here's the thing. Why can't we then say, hey, for 2 years, we're going to let the legislators get paid the minimum wage? Make that the law. And guess what? The living wage is going to change. You know what I mean? I mean, just innovative things like that, because I think once you're not in that situation, sometimes you forget what it was like. Sometimes you forget it was like to struggle. If you're not in the community regularly, or you don't have family that's struggling, you forget. And that's another reason why I'm running. I have that fire in my belly, and I want to remind people of what it's like to live in this economy. This is not easy. And you look at what's happening nationally, and you look at these 20-year-olds, and I just think, wow, when I got out of college, when I got out of high school, the world was my oyster. I felt like, oh my God, I'm free. I can go and do whatever I want. You know what I mean? And the world felt a lot safer. It felt a lot warmer. It felt a lot more like you can make some stuff happen. And I think this doom scrolling and all the problems and the way that the executive in office in DC works and speaks, it's a crap show. And we don't have role models like that. And we don't have a lot of spiritual leaders. Like in the late 60s, we had the Black Panthers, we had Martin Luther King, in the early 60s, we had JFK. So we don't have spiritual leaders like that anymore. We have celebrities.
And influencers. Yeah. Speaking of government ethics and people, mega corporations affecting the living wage, we've seen a lot of large corporations and lobbyists donate to campaigns for candidates at both the state and local level. Excuse the construction going on near my home right now. What do you think should or even can be done to reduce corporate influence on our state and local elections? And do you have any thoughts on increasing transparency in general around campaign funding, A, and state budget, B?
I have so many ideas in this area, and I don't even know which ones would be viable or not. The first thing I want to say is, why don't we have people in office who actually want to improve this wholeheartedly and fully? Like, why do you want to take corporate money in the first place? I think we should have comprehensive public funding. I don't think corporations should be able to donate at all. I think a campaign's budget should have to be disclosed. How much money are you going to raise? How much money are you going to spend? I think there should be a maximum that you could spend per constituent, in all honesty, and raise and spend. And then we can judge people and vote for them based on how they met their budget. I got judged on this as the fiscal officer of a nonprofit. Did we raise the money we said we were going to raise? Did we spend it the way we thought we were going to spend it? And did we meet our outcomes? Did we meet our goals and metrics? You know what I mean? Like, legislators don't have to do any of that. In a nonprofit, you're like, wow, we have to figure out where the paper clips go in this budget. You know what I mean? It's crazy. And then we have legislators who it doesn't matter. So, in terms of campaign finance reform, yeah, no foreign influence. We shouldn't allow corporate money at all. It should be individuals. It should be $100 and under. You should have to get out and talk to as many people as possible, because I don't know why you just don't want to do that in the first place. Why do you want the easy way? Because the easy way is not working for us. If you have the easy way getting in, you're going to do the easy thing when you are in, which is not to collaborate, which is to possibly make decisions behind closed doors, which is possibly to take a $35,000 brown bag. Like, we can go on and on. You know what I mean? But the self-interest or the self-preservation just has to end. It has to end.
You touched upon an issue, and that's the decision-making process in the legislature. It's heavily concentrated into the hands of just a few officials, primarily the chairs. And it seems like that structure now allows for them to make a lot of decisions on bills behind closed doors. What ideas do you have to, in my mind, they're actually circumventing the whole democratic process. What ideas do you have to remedy that? Do you have any solutions?
I think we need stronger ethics laws. I mean, honestly, I go back to, why don't people want to be ethical in the first place? Why do we have lawyers in office if they're not calling out when they themselves or people they're associated with or collaborating with or who they're coworkers are not following the Constitution? You know what I mean? Like, what good is all your expertise if it's not benefiting the public for its greatest good? I think that we have missed the entire game on our highest potential for self-governance, for the highest good for as many possible people possible. If we are not calling out that shit on a day-to-day basis in real time, it has to happen. If you are in a meeting and someone says or does something that's uncomfortable, are you staying silent? Are you speaking up? Are you saying, hey man, is this really how this works? And when they say, yeah, this is how it works, man, if you want to get your bills passed, this is what you have to do. That's when you say, well, this seems wrong. That seems wrong. And if a majority of people did that, it would have to change overnight. I don't understand. That's why I want to get in there. I want to see, why is this happening? Maybe it needs to be a reality show. Tanya Yamanaka goes to Congress. And let's figure out what's really happening. I don't know.
Something I've noticed in a lot of your responses, Tanya, is it's not as simple as changing the legislature. It's about affecting the culture, and some of it is convenience or affecting, these are harder things to change than a bill or a simple law. So I find it interesting that although your answers are obviously rooted in knowledge about the legislature, so much of it has to do with people's behaviors and personalities and the overall culture as a collective. So
that's what the obstacle is to the good bills.
Right.
The obstacle is the culture. The obstacle is the silence. The obstacle is the path of least resistance, because that's the path of least pono, likely, in that kind of environment. You know what I mean? So if we're going to be accountable to our most vulnerable people, we need to have people in there who have the cojones to call it out in a diplomatic, good way first, and then ramp up as needed, because we're not going to have bills for the highest good for the most number of people in our communities until people can see their own privilege and stop ignoring the thing in their head that says, damn, I wish I didn't have to stay silent on this. I hate that guy. But they do it anyway so that they can get what they want to get done. Well, that's only helping some of the people. That's not helping the process is so important. It's the only way we're going to get the system of governance is going to change. Ultimately, it's not going to stay the same. Everything, we're in a time period of everything changing. So let's just start talking about all the ways it can change. And it's going to start with the culture. You know what I mean? Internally.
Definitely, yeah. And we'll pass it along to you for.
Yeah, here's one that I personally experience and is near and dear to my heart, and it's kind of an example following on an application of what you've been talking about, is that the public school facilities on Hawai'i Island and other neighbor islands are not being adequately maintained. DOE even did a study, and of the 250 some public schools, most of the bottom 20 ranking of facilities adequacy were elementary schools, and most of those were on our island. And, some are past their end of life and are not being rebuilt. And, county says they don't, because we have one school district for the whole state, and the legislature appropriates funds. And so our county says there's nothing the county can do at the county level about education or safe school campuses. So what would you do to it? Oh, and also we've heard from our legislators that, well, they work to get bills passed and have funds appropriated. We don't follow up what DOE does with those funds. What would you do to address this so that our students and teachers have safe and enjoyable learning spaces?
I think it has to be a two-pronged approach, because I think we have to have short-term solutions and we need to have a long-term vision for how education should look 20 years from now, because we could start a whole new system of what it looks like, because I don't believe that kids should be stuck in schools and buildings all day long. I think kids, particularly today, want to be in the community. They want to be partnering up with and going to the farm, the forest, the mechanic's garage, the dance school, the theater, learn the marketing. Kids want to be around adults. Like, when we just shove them in by age, it's a very militarized way of educating people. It goes way, way, way back, this model of schooling, right? It goes way, 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 way back. And so, like Socrates, like age, that kind of thing. So, again, we need a vision for how it can look in the future, and then say, as of this date, we're going to just start schooling kids in this way in these communities. But for now, what we need is we need to ensure that teachers have teachers are funded first and foremost. They need to get paid, because we are not just asking teachers to teach, we're asking them to parent a lot of the times, because parents are working and they're not parenting as much. It's just the truth that we have to say. Again, that goes back to why I don't love a militarized economy, because we're saying we're going to go and train future parents to kill people and go over to this other country and make them have a better democracy. It just makes no sense. I mean, they're the ones that sound crazy, not me. I know it. The people who are doing this. But we do need to make sure that teachers are safe, kids are fed, kids can get to school. It might be about different hours of school too. I mean, I think we need to get so innovative because I think it's based on each community and each school. Because the problem is that in Hawaii, we are how many islands, how many schools, and Honolulu is deciding how all the schools are run. This is, anyone who's lived anywhere else knows that this doesn't really happen like that, this other places. The communities they have their own school boards and superintendents, and there's a whole different kind of hierarchy that works so that people at least feel more engaged in the policies of the school or the school district. Like for us, it could be even multiple districts on our island. Do you know what I mean? And we need to have teachers trained in de-escalation, mental health, neurodivergency, all these other kinds of things that are affecting most of the kids and parents actually by now. And I don't know if we really have that. I think we've gone so hard to educate the mind, we forgot about emotional intelligence and educating and nurturing the hearts and souls of people. And so the institutions need to wholly change in that sense.
Thank you.
Jeff, I want to ask, do we have time for one or more than one more question?
We have time for about 2 more questions.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. Completely shifting topics altogether, but back to, again, infrastructure is a big concern, especially across all islands. We have very rural communities. We've seen a lot of urban development, of course, in Oahu, but even more so now across other islands. But a ubiquitous issue is the problem of cesspools. There's a loose plan to transition to septic systems, but it's costly and it doesn't seem to be progressing very well. So what support do you think is needed to transition the islands to a more sustainable wastewater management system?
This is such a complex one because the state made this law, but they have no real way of enforcing it, and they didn't dedicate nearly enough money to actually make it happen. The compounding problem then to that is it's so expensive for people to do that conversion that a lot of them just aren't going to do it, right? And then what happens? What happens? And is septic the right solution? And is it going to be the right long-term solution for people to spend that kind of money? Are there other solutions? They didn't even look at potential other solutions. Why is there only one solution? I don't have the answers. I'm just saying that this is an example of another kind of bill that was created with probably good intentions, but not really looking at the broader way of figuring out, well, some communities might be able to have some different kind of wastewater treatment, and maybe just in a subdivision level. You know what I mean? Let's ground it down, and again, instead of saying that there's got to be one solution for the entire state. I'm not sure that those are going to work at that scalable level anymore. But the problem we need to extend the deadline, possibly, or we need to create a deadline, and then the state needs to allocate money and work with the county. I mean, honestly, though, we're not really known well for the different levels of government working well together on these hard solutions like water management, water management, solid waste management, road development. There's a lot of infrastructure issues that touch local, state, county, local, state, feds, and so it gets very complicated. And things I've heard in different meetings in Puna, it's hard to get all those same people in the same room at the same time on the same page. Mm-hmm. Well, how many years have we all been in office and we weren't able to do that? It's going to take someone who's going to say, no, we have to figure this out and drive it all the way through. And I think that's the problem also, is we have incumbents who have been in a long period of time, but they don't really they don't get judged on the bill they passed 4 years ago and if it's actually how much really happened from that bill. Was the money actually ever allocated? And what was the outcome? Like, so they could just, it's like getting a grant and then and yay, I got the grant, but then you don't really have to prove that you did anything towards it. You got the headline, you looked really good, everyone applauded. Did it help people? And it's literally what happened with bills.
We have time for one last question.
Our last question actually leads right out of that. So you've been elected and you've served, and what measurable outcomes would you want residents in your district to be able to see and celebrate from your influence in state politics?
I think I'd want to, I would want to do a survey. Like, did you interact with my office? And then what bills did you like? Where did I miss the mark? What did I not do? Where did I totally miss it? Like, did I not even touch on a couple things that, how did that happen? How did I not do that? Because I've been trying to, personal development. Let's just talk about personal development. You have to constantly want to improve yourself. I don't have all the answers, and I'm the first one to admit that, but I want to surround myself with people who do, or I want to know who are the people that I should call to get better answers. And so I want to know where I'm missing the mark instead of saying, hey, look at what I did, look at what I did, look at what I did, and have everyone just applaud and then, just cast their vote for me again. I want to know what isn't being done. You know what I mean? That's what I'm going to want to know, because that's the only way I know how to get better. I always take the best of what people say about me and the worst, and you kind of push away the real extreme stuff. You know what I mean? But the other stuff, you kind of have to listen to. You have to admit when you did something good. I've never been good at shouting my own, good things. And people always told me I would regret that at some point. When you run for office, you do realize, shoot, I should have been more about telling people all the things that I did all these years. But that's not me. I'm not going to grow if I don't know where I missed the mark. So I'm trying to figure out, how do you do that without getting blasted and then not being able to crawl out of bed for the next 3 days, while you actually absorb what people are telling you.
Thank you.
But we got to be able to be real with ourselves, is, I guess, my bottom line.
Very real.
Thank you, Tanya, for joining us tonight. Tanya is as a candidate for Senate District 2. Thank you also to both our interviewers, Gabe and Antu. Before we wrap up, I'd like to encourage everybody to discuss all of these great issues and really get out there and vote. Encourage your family and friends to please vote. HULI PAC was born from a shared drive to rework our system by seeking indigenously, progressive-minded, āina-based, equity-focused leadership for our Hawai'i Island community. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are willing to circle back to our roots and instill real change to regenerate and transform our Hawai'i Island community. For more information, check out our website, hulihai.com. That's HULIHI.com. Everybody have a great evening.
Thank you all.
At HULI PAC, we envision a future in which our Hawai'i Island community is empowered to elect pono leaders, nurture our relationship with āina, and inspire environmental, social, and economic well-being.
Our mission is to endorse and support candidates and office holders of integrity who serve āina and the people of Hawai'i Island. We do this by interviewing, researching, and ultimately vetting candidates and incumbents who are running for local office.
All of our interviews are streamed live so that you have the power to make decisions off of substance rather than a familiar face or a name. We must move forward and encourage voting based on righteous qualifications and a backbone to stand up for what is pono.